Somebody recently wrote in on my channel and asked if I could take some photos of birds with the RF 100 to 400. Birds are not something that I typically shoot, nor wildlife. Although when I first got back into photography after my long break and I got my M6 Mark II, one of the first lenses I bought was the EF 100 to 400, and a 2x converter, and I started actually photographing birds in our backyard with that, and I loved it, and I got some great shots with that. I've come out here to one of my favourite spots out here in the rolling hills, which is probably the wrong spot to try and get photos of birds. I should probably actually do it in my backyard where they come in to feed and bathe. So nonetheless, I'm going to hang around here for a little while, see if I can get any photos, and if I do, then I'll put them in this video. If I don't, well then this video will skip to tomorrow, where I'm going to attempt to, or Saturday, where I'm going to attempt to shoot some birds in our backyard, and then show you what the results are like. Because I get the impression a lot of people are interested in this lens, not so much for landscapes, but for shooting wildlife and birds and that kind of stuff. So it's a very valid question, and hopefully I can answer it for you and give you some pretty compelling results. I've already taken some close-up shots of llamas, if that's of any use, but I'm sure that people are interested in how quickly it focuses on small subjects with very small eyes, like birds, and perhaps even moving birds, although that's something I have very little experience with. But anyway, I'll have a crack at it and we'll see how we go. Okay, so it seems that there are more birds just behind me in these trees than anywhere in this field out in front of me, which is logical, makes sense. There are birds gathered in the various dams around here, but they're too far away, and this section of private property I can't go into. I can go into one a lot further down, but it's quite tricky to get down there over that fence. So I'm going to see if I can get any images of the birds in the trees behind me, but it's fairly overcast, the light is fairly dull, it's getting on in the afternoon, it's 20 past 5. But we'll see how we go. See what I can get. Incidentally, in terms of settings, I'm shooting auto ISO wide open on this lens, which is f8, and I've set the shutter speed to 3,200th of a second. On the off chance that I might catch something, freeze some action, I think my chances are pretty remote, but I'll give it a go. Actually, one more thing I just thought about too, I should probably set the autofocus eye detection to animals rather than people. Oh, here we go, subject to detect animals. Perfect. Tracking AF, subject, animals, eye detection enable, continuous AF. I think we will enable that. AF operations servo. Alright, so we'll see how we go. So AF operations, servo AF method, eye detect, subject, animals, eye detection enable, continuous AF enable. Let's see what we can do with that. I'm sure there are people watching me right now going, that's not how you photograph birds, you idiot. You don't just stand on the side of the road and hope that they come to you. I'm sure I should be getting down low, hiding somewhere and, you know, hanging around where birds go to feed. which would be down there, down in the valley, where I can't get to. It's funny, there are a bunch of corellas about 100 metres away up the road, and straight away the animal detect picks up one of those walking on the road with its back to me. So it knows it's a bird and it's tracking it automatically, but it's too far away. I need to be 5 times closer, and as soon as I get closer they're gonna nick off. It's pretty clever though. They picked that up so easily. Yeah, that's really effective. I mean, that bird is just a little dot in the screen. It's tiny, and yet it has no trouble identifying it, picking it up and locking onto it as it moves around. So that's impressive. But the photo's not impressive. I need to get somewhere where I can get a decent photo. Cows. I do like cows. That's interesting, it's locking onto cows as well. So the cows are probably, 400 metres away, 500 metres away. Straight away it just locked onto a cow. Of course my wife has to ring. Yes, my dear, you always feature in my videos. I tell you, I really am impressed with how this thing locks on. You know, even out at 400mm, in dull light here, at f8, as soon as it detects an animal, it just locks onto it and just tracks it no matter where that animal moves. I mean, there's a cow, must be 300 metres away. Straight away it picked out its head, and it followed its head as it was moving around grazing. Just a little tiny square on the head, just incredible. Really, really good. Okay, so you joined me a day after I went out and attempted to photograph birds with the Canon RF 100 to 400mm lens, a lens which I've waxed lyrical about in my previous review. It's a fantastic piece of glass, and that's as someone who owned the EF 100 to 400, and which remains my favourite lens of all time. But I'm starting to think that this lens is going to creep up on that title, for me at least anyway. And there's a few reasons for that. First off, I'm not an experienced bird photographer, not by a long shot. I'm not a bird photographer's elbow, and yet in very poor light, shooting at ISO 25600 wide open under heavily overcast skies, I was amazed at how this lens managed to identify, lock onto and focus and track birds that were sometimes 200 or 300 meters away from me. It is astonishing. Very dark birds like ravens, it had no trouble identifying them and locking onto them, again 200 or 300 meters away. As birds that were closer to be moved in and out of branches, again no problem. It really is an amazing lens. Shortcomings, very few as far as I can tell. There was a little bit of colour fringing, purple fringing on a couple of images, but only a couple of them, and they were very easily corrected in Photoshop or Lightroom. The autofocus is fantastic. The animal eye tracking is incredible. Image stabilization is buttery smooth. Color rendition, contrast, color, everything. It's really, really good. I think if you are truly passionate about photographing birds and that's something that you want to do a lot of, then you'll probably invest in the L glass, like my mate Peter Virag and Graham Marnie have done. But if you're like me, you like photographing landscapes and you'd like to photograph birds or wildlife occasionally, you will not go wrong with this lens. It is so versatile, it is so competent, especially for the price, but most particularly, like I said in the first review, because it is so light, you can carry it with you at all times, which means not only do you have lots of additional opportunities in landscape photography for plucking out micro scenes within larger vistas, but if you want to photograph some birds, or even flowers up close, as I showed in the previous video, this lens will do it all. It is so damn good. I really can't recommend it highly enough. Hopefully the images illustrate that point. In terms of my hit rate with moving subjects, again, like I said, I've got bugger all experience. The only birds I've really photographed are in my backyard, and that's cheating because I feed them, and so they come to me. But my hit rate on moving targets is probably about 50%, but again, we're talking really bad light. A person who has very little experience photographing moving birds, I'm sure that if I played with the parameters for the autofocus, because there are a bunch of additional settings that I didn't touch, and more particularly if I had more experience photographing birds, then my hit rate would go right up. For static subjects, birds sitting in trees, on fence posts, that kind of stuff, 100%. My hit rate was 100%. Every photo was pin sharp. So I think it's an astonishing lens. The only thing a lot of people are going to have to overcome is the fact that it just doesn't look as fancy as an L lens. It doesn't look as pro as an L lens. But seriously, if you want to have a long focal range lens that is very, very competent with you all the time to be able to take advantages of opportunities like this, there's nothing else out there like it, for the Canon system anyway. So I highly recommend this lens. But if you've got any other questions about it, by all means, leave a comment below and I'll do my best to answer it. I respond to every comment. I might not be able to answer every question effectively, because I'm not an expert bird photographer, but I'll certainly have a crack at it. So if you're in any doubts, I don't think there's any reason to doubt this lens. It's proven itself to me for sure, and I had an EF 100-400 and loved it. I have no regret selling it. This lens is brilliant. So anyway, that's it for me. Hopefully you found this useful. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, please give it a thumbs down. I'm not fussed either way. And if you've watched my videos for a while and you're not subscribed, I'd certainly welcome you as a subscriber. Thanks for hanging out with me again. Hopefully I'll see you again real soon. Bye for now.